well scrubbed up group here, isn't it? Let's see. We've got Peggy here. Right here. Oh, there she is. And Randy's here. And Tom Sawyer. Where's my buddy?
I haven't seen Tom.
Okay. He's not here. And Tony and Brian Hill. So, and we have, this is Stingle Elementary, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and here, Scott Milburn manipulated it so he could get Peter here. Where is Peter?
Oh, we had this scheduled months ago.
Yeah, sure. Upper Arlington kids are here. So I'm going to tell you a couple things about this room, okay? Because this is a really special room. Now, I think they had the tour already, right? You all heard about this? But the Arlington kids, which school is it in Arlington?
Greenfield.
Okay, because my wife was a Hastings varsity cheerleader.
This is the next generation.
Okay, so this desk is really an important desk because Abraham Lincoln, okay, came to Ohio twice, and he was actually, his body was here a third time, and we'll tell you about that in a second. But Abraham Lincoln was in this room, and he was sitting on a chair right where you are, young lady. What is your name? Okay, do you know Abraham Lincoln? Are you related to him? Okay, but anyway, he sat right there. And he had his hands on this desk right here. And he was sitting with the governor, and I think that was the governor right there in that picture up there, okay? And there was a knock at the door. Now, when a person runs for president, they get votes, but then the states they are the ones that ultimately determine it. It's really sort of automatic. It's called electoral college, okay? You don't need to remember all, well, you do need to remember all this in case you ever run for president. So, but it was very, very controversial when Lincoln was elected president. It was very turbulent times. And there was a knock at that door, right there, that door, and a guy came in and said, Mr. Lincoln, the United States House of Representatives has accepted the results of the Electoral College, and you are going to be president, Mr. Lincoln. It happened right in this room. That's why we call it the Lincoln Room. Now, they used to call this the ceremonial office. I don't know who ever came up with that, but that was the dumbest name I ever heard in my life. So we have changed it here unilaterally to the Lincoln Room. Do we have a sign yet for the Lincoln Room? We have it up? We have it up? Good. So let me tell you a couple things else, and if these people just get out of the way. Right over here, move, Pop. There's Lincoln. Okay, there's Lincoln. Now, excuse me, could you move? We don't even want you here. That is a bust of a man named Solomon Chase. Now, I'm giving you a tip for when you run for class president. Here's what happened. Solomon Chase was the governor of Ohio. And he ran against Lincoln. I think part of the reason why Solomon Chase didn't win, there's two reasons. One is because the Ohio people didn't support him. They were split. And from my little bit of reading, and I haven't studied this so much, but I think this is true, Solomon Chase was very much against slavery. And it was at a time when there was a division in the country. We ended up in a civil war, right, over this issue. And I think because Solomon Chase felt so strongly that people should not be held in slavery, he lost support. You know, there's a good lesson in that for all of you, because sometimes, it's a really good lesson here. Sometimes we don't want to do what we think is the right thing, because we think if we don't, we might get ahead. Okay? We think if we don't tell the truth, or if we don't do X, Y, or Z, or whatever that we think we know we should do, but we don't do it because we think we'll get ahead. Now, Solomon Chase probably lost because he did the right thing. But did he really lose? Did he really lose by doing the right thing? Huh? What do you think?
No.
Who wants to answer that? Why didn't he lose? Why didn't he lose?
Because slavery was over.
Well, it just was starting because he stood on principle. You understand what I mean by that? Principle? Okay, so Solomon Chase, even though he lost to Abraham Lincoln, and what Lincoln did, and this is a tip I wanted to give you, Lincoln went around to everybody and he said, I know you're not going to be for me to be president. But if your guy does not win on the first time we vote, how about voting for me the second time? And they all went, okay. And guess what? He became president. So when you run for class president or whatever, ask them, if you're not going to win, ask them to vote for you the second time. And then right whenever you know you won. Okay, now, so Solomon Chase was put in the cabinet of Abraham Lincoln. And he is the one, what's in your wallet? He is the one that made the money green. And he was Secretary of the Treasury. And then he became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And that is a very, very big job. And that's Solomon Chase. And that's his bust over there, which those reporters get out of the way. You can see it. Move, Barton. Very good the way you showed that. It was like almost like The Price is Right. Now, I got another story for you. Can we open those things right there? See through that window. You see that big giant building through there?
Yeah.
Okay. There used to be a hotel there. There used to be a hotel in that where that big building is. And William McKinley, who has a big statue out front on the lawn, he was governor of Ohio. And when he was governor, his wife would come out onto the porch of the hotel. And she'd say, Billy, come on home, time for dinner. And then he would leave the governor's office right here, and he would go over to the hotel and he would have dinner with his wife. Every morning when Governor McKinley came to work, he wore a carnation in his lapel. You know what a carnation is? Like a rose, a red flower, okay? So Governor McKinley became President McKinley. And every morning when he was in the White House, his wife would put a carnation in his lapel. And so one time he was headed to Buffalo, New York for what's called the Pan Am exhibition. It's like all the countries in the part of the world in which we live. So he went up there and he had this flower. And a little girl, just about as pretty as you, not quite though, she said, Mr. President, I really like your flower. And he took the carnation and he gave it to the girl and he walked up the steps to the podium. And a man stood up, shot him, and killed the president. And the state flower in Ohio is, guess what? Carnation. Isn't that something? It's a really interesting story. So this room is very, very historic. Now, for my colleagues here, my wife came in here one day when Doris Kearns Goodwin, she's the Pulitzer Prize winner, and she wrote the book, The Team of Rivals, which is the book about how Lincoln took his enemies and he put them in his cabinet. And she came in and she was very, very nervous, shaken. I can't believe this room. It was like history for her. So we sat down, and she and I were having lunch, and my wife walked in. And my wife brought this dog-eared copy of The Team of Rivals. And Doris Kearns Goodwin looked at my wife and said, it took me 5 years to write this book. And my wife said, it took me 6 years to read it. Arlington graduate. Okay? So that's a little bit about this room. Now these people whose pictures are up on the wall, these are, who can tell us who these guys are? Who knows the names? Do you know, Joanna? Because there's Worthington and there's Kiffin. There's Huntington. So my staff doesn't know. But they would all know. So guess what? When I'm not governor anymore and they go to paint me, I'm going to dress up like them. What do you think? Now, a couple other things that I want to tell you before we